Hey, Jenna.
Hey, Brian.
Let's paint. Alright, so today we've got a Grave Wraith from Reaper, and I've started with a black primer because I want it to be kind of dark and spooky. And I'm going to start.
Always a good choice.
Yeah, it's got these little gravestones. And normally I would break those off the little support, but I have no idea how I want to base them yet, so I've just left that on there.
Also, you're going to lose them if you break them off too soon.
Yeah, and I'm terrible about that, so I'm going to start with a dragon blue paint, and I'm basically just going to take a flat brush and sort of dry brush, but I'm going to keep it a little more wet because I just want to get it on mostly the upward angles and keep some of that black in there, but
So you're starting a new technique called moist brush.
I wouldn't say it's new, but yes, semi-wet brush. And this is the part of the video where I mix paint.
Good job.
Oh yeah. So, with the black primer, that blue's going to be pretty dark, and it's very thin layers because I've taken off some of the paint from the brush, but it's still pretty wet. And I'm going with the grain, so to speak, so it kind of gets into those crevices, but not so much that some of that black isn't still there. Because ultimately I want a lot of like dark on this.
And especially with the black primer, when you're doing dry brushing, you can let the dry brushing do the work for you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and plus, when we get to it, when I use the shade to wash it, it's also going to stick to that black and keep it super dark in those areas. So, yeah, just dabbing that paint in there, and I've added a couple more layers because as much as I like how dark that is, I wanted to brighten it up a little bit too. Even though a lot of that will come out with more dry brushing later on.
What made you decide to go blue?
You know, I did a lot of image searches online to see how other people had painted, and everybody went green, and it just looked weird.
I wouldn't go green if I was doing one, I don't think. Green doesn't say spooky to me.
Yeah, I like blue because it also makes me think like, oh, you know, moonlight would be kind of bluish, like maybe that's the moonlight shining down and you're seeing the shadow kind of coming out of it and the moonlight reflecting off of it in a way, but also,
Nice.
you know, using a cold color for something that's undead is kind of fitting, I think. I also have an inability to center my camera.
Well, we'll get better.
We
We're
will.
not famous actors.
Yeah,
We
just
don't know our mark very well.
I came up with an awesome technique for centering it. You'll see in a minute.
Already improving.
Yeah. So I'm just getting in there and trying to coat as much as this is possible, but keeping some of that black prime still, and not just completely coating it up.
Don't oversaturate your blue, otherwise, why even bother?
Yeah, exactly.
Just dunk it in the paint.
Yep. Right into the paint can. So there he is, all blued up, and he already looks pretty neat.
Very true.
Yep. And I like that, you know, it's not a lot of even color. Like some parts are still darker, some are a little bit brighter.
And especially with, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of the black primer because the contrast is great. But what I like the best about it is if you're going for shadows and you want to have that really harsh contrast and you are not comfortable with the small details, you could just be like, hey, I'm done.
Yep. So now I'm going to shade it, and I'm using the Drakenhof Nightshade from Citadel just to wash that, and that's going to sit in all the crevices, and it's also going to darken up that blue. So you're going to add a lot of pop to it just from the wash. it's...
You just know how much I like that nightshade color.
It's one of my favorites. Like, it just looks so nice. Everything should be nightshade. Maybe not. But, yep,
If
just...
everything is nightshade, nothing is nightshade, Brian.
Fair. So, yeah, you just want to get it in all the crevices that you can, and it'll really change a lot on your miniature. So already you can see it, adding those shadows into the folds of his cloak body, his snuggie, if you will.
It is sort of a snuggie.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Hey, I mean, when you're dead, it's the little things.
Yeah, I imagine you're constantly cold, so you really just want to throw on that snuggie. At least be comfortable in your death. Did I ever tell you how much I just love washes? They're so much fun. Alright, so he has been washed. Just adding a little bit more here. Because, it likes to run. It's very wet, very thin. And I just want to make sure I get all the little grooves to let it sink in there. And you could also use something like Nuln Oil if you wanted it darker, but the Nuln Oil does make it look oily. So while that dries, we've got these gravestones. So
And here I was looking forward to watching paint dry.
only when we use the Agrellan Earth, because that's super fun to watch dry. So I've used a dirty gray, and I'm going to use the same, just moist brushing technique, because I still want some of that black to get through. And just dab it on, and that's that. It's pretty easy when you have something that's flat and not much texture to it, but
That is one thing that I'm learning with trial and error, is the more detail on the mini to begin with, the easier it is.
Yeah, depending on what that detail is, like...
I mean, if you're going to go in with a small brush and paint every little ribbon on something, yes, that's obviously a little more complex, but...
Right. Which is one reason I picked this one, because it's all just, like, 3 things. You've got a sword, cloth, and grave. Like, it's very easy to do and quick. And, you could be as technical as you want. Like, you could essentially go in and layer every fold, instead of washing and highlighting and dry brushing. You could just layer it up, and it would look cool, but it would also take forever. So, now that I've done that, and once it's dry, I'm going to take a mountain stone color and make a wash out of that. And that's basically the same idea as the shade, but it's also going to darken up that dirty gray, and especially in the way that the wash is going to run down it, it's going to add some different tones to that stone look. Because I imagine that these graves are old and in a disused cemetery. So just a drop or 2 of mountain stone, and I put about 5 drops of water here, just to make it super thin.
Don't want to be too heavy with it.
No, because otherwise you're just going to, coat the layer you did, and it's not going to wash properly. So, and if you've noticed, I've made a genius way to center myself by drawing an X on my table.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
It is,
Good job.
That's what they pay me the big bucks for.
Just taking that good old pirate advice.
X marks the spot. So, this came out, really wet, so I'm just, wicking away some of the excess moisture before it, just goes straight into the ground texture around the stones. So if you add too much wash, just wick some of it away. It's fine.
definitely comes in handy.
Yep.
And I don't know about Citadel paints because I haven't used them enough yet. But with acrylics, if you get a little too much paint on and it's too thick because you didn't water it down enough and you want to get it off, just add water to it really quick. You can still wick it away.
Exactly. And Citadel's pretty good about it. It works really good with a wet palette, your favorite thing in the world, Jenna. But they do thin down really nicely, and one of the differences I've noticed, these are Reaper paints that I'm using at the moment, is Citadels don't look as chalky when you water them down.
Good.
Yep. So now I need to do the gravestone next to the Wraith, and I noticed that because I used the dirty gray on my wet palette, it really thinned out that paint. So I've had to add a little bit more to it. But at the same time, I really liked the way it looked. Like more of that black prime came through with the thinner paint.
Very nice.
Yeah. So I just added a little bit more texture to it. And I'm trying very hard not to throw a bunch of gray on my nice blue Wraith, because then I'd have to fix it, and that's not fun.
It's looking good.
Yeah, so far, like I said, pretty easy, very fun miniature to paint, just because it's not overly complicated. Like, you can spend a ton of time doing all kinds of different textures on other miniatures, but when you have just a couple of things that you can focus on, it goes pretty quick. So again, with the Mountain Stone wash, just to darken this up a bit. And you could have a lot of fun with washes. Look, oops, I dropped it. One thing you don't want to do. It's really fun when you drop it on the floor and your dogs decide to sniff it.
Yeah, they just want to help.
Yeah, they constantly try to help with their nose under my elbow when I'm painting something like an eyeball that is already nerve-wracking. Yep. So, while I wait for that to dry, I'm going to bust out that Nuln oil. And that's going to darken that gray even more, while also sinking into all the little crevices again and really darkening them up. So you get a lot of the cracks. Some of the details on the stone itself will pop out. And it's probably my second favorite wash color, aside from that blue. So yeah, now you can start to see some of the details of the gravestones themselves. There's all kinds of little skulls and nooks and crannies and cracks and what have you.
They're so cute.
They really are. Just what you want out of a spooky cemetery. Cute gravestones.
I mean, if your gravestone's not going to be cute, what's even the point of dying?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty sure that's exactly what the Egyptians said when they built pyramids. Like, this'll be cute.
I mean, why else would there be so many hieroglyphics?
You know, that Sphinx, it's adorable.
It is. It probably was even cuter when it had a nose.
Damn that Napoleon.
He was jealous.
Just imagine, what are we gonna do today, Napoleon? Whatever I feel like. God, boom, blows the nose off the Sphinx.
You know, this seems like it could be historically accurate.
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure it happened just like that.
Don't learn history from a painting show on YouTube. That's all we're going with.
No, we're better
That's your life advice for today.
Yes. We're much better at traumatizing each other with horrendous death stories of our childhood favorites.
I didn't know that people didn't know. Okay,
I certainly
just-
didn't know.
you do now.
Yep, tune into our live shows to hear more on how the actress that played Ducky died a terrible death.
Live shows are... they're a different animal.
Oh yeah. We drink and paint, and we don't explain anything, we just talk about dumb shit.
The stuff we do explain has nothing to do with painting.
Exactly. Alright, so, dry brushing. My favorite. So I'm going back to that dragon blue. And as opposed to moist brushing, you're going to really get a lot of paint off that brush. And you're just going to hit all the upward angles. So going back to the original base color is how I like to start. Instead of just immediately adding highlights, it's going to really accentuate all the shadows that the wash made. And just really kind of bring it back to where it was before you washed it. And just try to hit only the upward stuff, go against the grain so you don't sink into all the little crevices that you washed earlier. And it just really brings out all the folds.
Much contrast, so wow.
Oh yeah. And I just love the blues. Like, they look so nice.
It's just amazing how just soft layering can make such a difference.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna start buying you minis in duplicate, so at the end you can show them side by side.
In other words,
Painted
paint more.
versus unpainted, yes.
So now I'm going to take Temple Guard Blue, and I am going to dry brush again. And this is one of the layer paints from Citadel, so it's super thin. So technically you could just leave it wet and just highlight, but I like dry brushing. It's so much fun.
It's also a little more... it's weird to say it's a little more controlled.
It is,
Because it's really something that you don't want to try to control. It's very freestyle of paint.
Yep.
But when you don't dry brush, sometimes you get a little too much. You don't really get the look you're wanting. Dry brush is essentially the same as when you're coloring with a pencil. You want to start light and
Yep.
then start going heavier and heavier because erasing darker lines is harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Same difference.
Yep.
You
So
can always add more paint.
exactly, that's a great point. So I'm also not going to go over every inch of this with the lighter color, just to add a little bit of a lighting effect. So mostly on the upward facing folds I'm hitting, just to brighten those up, as if, you know, like I said earlier, moonlight might be shining down on this this little wraith.
I just want to hang out with him. He seems real chill.
He seems so blue. Wonder what he...
He just
Yeah,
he just looks like he's chasing someone down. Like, excuse me, sir, you forgot your sword.
So there you go. Now that he's been highlighted a little bit, it's very subtle differences in color, but it makes those highlights stand out just a bit. You know, because I imagine cloth isn't going to be too reflective. But now I'm going to use some Nihilak Oxide. And I'm going to do the same thing, only in smaller areas, just to add some more highlights to the upward angles of this guy. And this is kind of like almost like a turquoise color, and it's also a very, very thin paint. So again, you could highlight manually with it, and it would be fine, because it goes on so thin. But dry brushing is just fun. So just hitting key areas that, would be more exposed to the light, just to make them pop out a little bit more.
I will say, whenever you're dry brushing too, if you're not sure if you want to do more or not, just step away from what you're doing, leave the room for like 10 minutes and come back. Especially because sometimes the paint can look more contrasty when it's dry.
Yep.
Sometimes you've been staring at it so long you just don't see the difference you've made.
Right. And even just looking at it, on my desk, because, surprise, I'm not actually painting currently. It has dried out and it does match a little bit more. So I will want to go in with another layer of that oxide just to brighten it up a bit more. Because you can see here as it's wet, like, it really stands out. But it does dull down once it's dry. And that's something that you just have to look at as you do it. So now you've got a little bit more transition from lighter to darker as you go from the head down to the bottom of this mini.
I love how it looks like you've painstakingly put in every one of those fabric folds, but we know you didn't because we watched behind the scenes.
Nope, it's just fast, sloppy, and easy.
Much like life,
Yeah.
except for the easy part.
Exactly. So now I'm going to get that dirty gray again, and I'm going to dry brush my gravestones. And this is just to bring that base color back up. And that's going to sit on those other layers I did, and it's going to be a little bit darker. So with the mountain stone and the Nuln Oil, it's going to look a little more shadowy. Easy peasy.
Lemon squeezy.
I wonder if this Wraith liked lemons when he was alive.
No clue. Did life give him lemons?
It's possible. I mean, he is a Wraith now. Like, normally you don't turn into a Wraith when you had just a super great time.
Maybe.
I mean, who knows? Maybe he's just like, you know what? I'm dead, but I'm still just gonna keep on living my life.
I think he probably hates lemons. He doesn't look like a citrus lover to me.
I don't know. I could see him down in Hawaii, like sipping a Mai Tai on the beach.
I think he's more of a pina colada guy.
He does like getting caught in the rain.
Knew it. He looks the type.
He does. Which is a song about trying to cheat on your spouse.
And then finding out that the person you're cheating with was your spouse all along.
Such a stupid song.
I mean, really, how does your relationship survive that? It shouldn't. You were both cheating on each other. Just because it happened to be, in the end, with you.
Yeah, and for more on that, you should really listen to Punch Up the Jam, because they do a whole episode. But, yep. So, that's how I paint a Wraith. And if you stay tuned for part 2, I'm going to try some object source lighting. So,
Getting fancy.
oh yeah, we'll see how bad I screw that up. But anyway, I have been Brian,
I'm Jenna.
and this has been Let's Paint.